everybody knows at least one or two things that they could do to drastically change their lives. The answers are within. The only place that there are answers for your life would be within this one person. And who would that be? Well, that would be you, of course. And I'm no different, whether it's, over the course of my life, whether it was, get out of this toxic relationship or lose this weight or stop drinking or stop eating like this or start exercising. Like there was always several things that I knew I needed to do. And my life has changed drastically once I started to do those things. And it continues up until this day. Like whatever it is, the thing that I'm not doing or you're not doing, that's the entrance point. All the answers are within, but it's like the one thing that you don't want to do that you could do that could change your life. Like that's where it all starts. So the biggest example of this was the turning point in me becoming a coach and like doing this for a living full time. And it's like impossible how far I've come in, just getting started as a person who calls themselves a thinking partner or a coach or a strategic consultant, whatever you want to call it, the thing that I do, it's impossible to get here, and yet I'm here and I'm doing it and I love it. Turning point of how I got here was I was in a point in my life where I was sober and I had previously, once I got sober and I started to realize like spiritually, there was like a way bigger picture and I was like really doing a lot of harm. I was like, I'm just gonna serve. I just want to serve. And I just wanted to like do that in the 12-step rooms and like help other people. And then it made sense that I wanted to serve it outside the rooms too. And so I was like, I need to change my career. I need to go bigger. And I went to this career that wasn't quite right for me, but it was serving in a big way. And I became a hockey director in Vail. And I went celibate because I started to realize that I had been harming I was like this hopeless romantic, but I was actually just like doing harm to women by using up their childbearing years on like, an F-boy like me, basically, is what I would call myself at that point. So I was like, I want marriage, but there's something in me that I'm stringing these women along for a couple months and then like, there's something wrong with me there. I'm not going to keep doing that. So I took myself off the market, and when I took myself off the market to just like work on me, and I gave it to God, and I was like, okay, God, if you really want me to, have something like that, you figure it out. 'Cause I can't do that. I'm broken that way. And about 10 months later, I found myself on a blind date with my now wife, Katie, and I was available. She was available. There was a lot of work that we were doing on ourselves at that time. And so all of a sudden, now that I had this other person in my life, I ended up marrying her about a year after that. And there was all this like spiritual transformation happening. We didn't have sex before we got married. Like all this stuff that I think everybody should have sex all the time with everybody. But for some reason, I was doing this spiritual thing and this spiritual experiment with Katie, and we just kept going of like not having sex, and we kept this, building on this like intimate friendship relationship. We were interested in doing it for sure. But so all of a sudden I just understood that there was something bigger than me happening. Like it was a miracle that we didn't have sex before we got married and we really wanted to. It was a miracle that that led me into that job in Vail. It was a miracle that I was like starting to help people, so the marriage, all these things were going on in my life, being sober, realizing that God was actually a real thing. Didn't know that. So it took me, I was like, something big needs to change. And I don't know what it is, but I was like totally okay because of how much harm I had caused. I was totally okay with like playing small for the rest of my life. And there was a 2-for-1 ticket to a Tony Robbins event that I was offered for my birthday. And I was like, absolutely, I'm all in. I'd seen like a documentary about Tony Robbins, and I knew I needed to help people. I just knew that it wasn't in the hockey world anymore. And not frowning on it, just for me, my call, if you know me, like you understand, like this guy, great that he could serve, but like, yeah, he should be doing it maybe outside of the sports world. And so I went to this Tony Robbins event in January, and I had this like eye-opening experience, and I wanted more. And once you've been to that event, you can go and volunteer at that event. And so I paid money in July to go to the next Tony Robbins event. So I flew to Dallas. I didn't pay money like to the people at the event. I volunteered at the event, but I like paid money to get on a flight. I was absolutely broke. I had left like a decent paying job in Vail where I was just going to live out my days. And, when I met Katie and I changed my career, I changed my life. I was substitute teaching. I was totally broke. And I moved, so I fly to Dallas in the middle of July, and I helped facilitate this event. And I just was like going to serve. I was like, okay, I want to serve in a bigger way. I don't know how to do that. I'm broke as a joke and ready to choke. And they put me at the product booth, and the product booth at a Tony Robbins event is like, they sell supplements, but they sell like his audio products, like his CDs, and his CDs have like changed people's lives, right? So he's selling like, $300 products, like a 30-day, it's like hours and hours of like, helping people change their lives. And so and I was trained by a guy that was trained by Tony Robbins in sales. And so he was like, training us how Tony Robbins trains people. And it was like mine, so I was feeling like I'm getting all this value by showing up. And, we all have this one thing that we know that we're supposed to do. We don't have maybe the bigger answers, but maybe there's one or two things. So I jumped all in and I started to get all these answers. In the middle of this, like, the people that I'm like serving with, these other volunteers, they're like the craziest, most amazing people on the planet. To go and volunteer at a Tony Robbins event is insane. So other insane people were there with me. And while I was serving at this booth, it was like day 3 or day 4, this lady came up and she was asking me about every single different program. Okay, what about that? Okay, well, the outcome of that one is this, and I'm like talking to her about each program. And then I realized, I just had this voice in the back of my head kind of go, you need to challenge her. She had that look about her where nothing was connecting because she was not connected with herself. And I just knew that something had to happen. And I said, you're at the wrong booth. And I think you know that. And she looked at me and her eyes started to well up. So we'd been talking for 5 minutes and she couldn't land on something. I just was like, oh, she's at the wrong booth. And I said, the booth that you belong at is the one like 20 feet over there where they're signing up for Date with Destiny, which is like the 6-day Tony Robbins event, which is like $10,000. And it's like Tony Robbins every single day. It's like this intense, very life-changing event. Anybody that goes to it is like, yep, that changed my life for sure. And I was like, that's the one you need to go to. And she starts bawling her eyes out, and her friend is there with her, and she's like celebrating. She's like, yes, this is exactly what she needed. She came here, she knew she needed a breakthrough. And so I walk her over there, and she ends up signing up for the thing, and everybody's crying, and I came back to the booth, and I'm like, wait, they'd like take a picture with me, like that, like it's something sentimental for them. And I'm like waving and saying bye. And then there's this dude that's like watching. He doesn't work at the place. He's actually kind of like a high roller. He was in the executive, like, high-level coaching program, this awesome dude named Rakan, and he's watching this whole situation unfold, and he goes, Zach, he was just, like, talking with somebody at the booth because he knew him there, and he was like, Zach, you must have had some experience at Date with Destiny if you sold her with such conviction. And I was like, dude, I've never been to the event, but I've seen that look before, Like, I've seen that look when I'm looking in the mirror each day. Like, I know there's something more. I don't know what to do, but I know I have to go do something. And somehow I know that that's going to suffice. I'm going to do something and that will suffice. And so I'm like going to go to this Tony Robbins and then I'm going to go volunteer. And I had seen that look in her eye of like, I'm like almost there, but I just need some help to like pull it all together, and I saw that she was there and she needed somebody to like call her to the person that she's here to be right now, that she has it inside of her, but she needs somebody to ask her to rise, to call, to rise to the occasion, to rise to the call. And her life was changed. And so she ended up in the next year, we stayed in contact, and in the next year, she was a Google executive, by the way. And so I was talking with like, a Google executive, and I didn't even know that at the time. She left Google, and she was like thinking about leaving Google, but it was like a lion's, king's ransom. She was getting paid, and she started a coaching business, and she made $1 million in her first year as a coach. And I know that story more deeply because that guy that was asking me about like, the event, he offered me a half price ticket. He had like an extra ticket that he was able to sell to me for half price, which I couldn't afford. And on the spot, I just knew I was like in this powerful moment, in the presence of this powerful moment, I'm saying yes. And like there are times in places in history where like the next right thing, you're not exactly sure, but you're getting a big fat opportunity that you know of, and you're just like, yes, okay, I'm all in. And I started working morning hockey lessons, to make the extra $5,000 that I didn't have, to go to this event that I couldn't afford, to get, to buy the plane ticket I couldn't afford, to stay in the Airbnb with strangers that I couldn't afford to pay for. And I went to this event, and that event cracked me open. It changed my life. And I was like, well, I'll just wait. This was 2019. I was like, I'll just wait until the next year's one. I'll wait until 2020. And there was a strange little thing that happened in 2020 where the whole world shut down. So that event didn't happen for like several years after that. So there's a thing that sometimes there's just this energy of like, you're waiting around, like, but you know that you got to change something. And I'll tell you, like, growth doesn't happen by thinking about it. Growth happens when you take the action on the one thing that you have any direction with at all. You know, I got to go on the diet. I got to start waking up at 6 a.m. I got to leave this toxic relationship. I got to start that business. And that is how it is all rolled out from there. It all started with like getting sober. And from that point, you know, this was just another point along the story of like this miraculous turning point where I helped make $1 million difference in this incredibly high performer's life. I didn't know it at the time, but I could recognize that look because I have had that look where you know you got all of these things to offer and you just don't know how to get it into a place, into a format that you could actually serve. You know, so if that's you, if you have a thing and you're standing on the sidelines or you're waiting in line hoping that somebody's going to like talk you into saying yes to the thing, please reach out. I have an amazing group coaching opportunity that is out of this world. It is an unbelievable environment and opportunity to grow and change your life. At the very least, do the thing, whatever the thing is. If you want to be in a place where those things keep happening, you do the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing, you know, come and join. But if you just do the next thing, you'll know what to do next. I love you. Thank you for hanging out with me on this time. Take care. God bless you.